I'd be lost without Logan. Good. Okay. All right. Welcome, everybody. I've been looking forward to tonight because I wanted to share some cool things with you. I was going to try to do this last week, but it didn't work out. This new laptop is supposed to be really nice, but it freezes up, and they want to give me a new one. I said, "We just got it fixed for here. Don't give me a new one yet." So we're gonna talk about some of the highlights of last week, obviously, but I wanted to start by telling you a couple of stories. And to preface this, I want to ask you to think about times in your life when you felt alone or forgotten, but when you look back, you realize there was somebody there to help you, that you had some maybe divine intervention, because I think we all have that. We just don't recognize it. So I'm gonna kind of expand on that story. If you read the Bible, this is the New Testament story about Jesus on the road to Emmaus after he was crucified, and he appeared to these two disciples, and he walked with them most of the day, and they didn't recognize who he was. And it wasn't until he broke bread and blessed it that they recognized that this was the Jesus Christ who they had followed and worshiped. And so one of the messages of this is, if you believe in Jesus Christ, that he is aware of us and that he is with us more than we realize. Okay, so that's the backdrop. And again, I want you to be thinking about times in your life when you have felt alone and forgotten by God and realized maybe he hasn't forgotten you. Okay, so let me shift gears here now. This is a hill in Okinawa. It's the middle of the island of Okinawa. And this is the current hill, or a more recent image of this hill. But if we go back 75 years or so ago, this is what that hill looked like. This was Sugarloaf Hill. This was the last American invasion of a Japanese island in preparation for the Americans to launch their assault on Japan. So by gaining the airstrip in Okinawa, our fighters and bombers could attack Japan. And we were planning on invading Japan because no way were the Japanese going to give up. They were going to arm children and women to defend the homeland, anticipating an invasion. And we anticipated millions of lives being lost. So this particular hill was when the Americans, I'm telling you this because my dad was there. When the Americans landed on the landing craft, there was not a shot fired. And the Marines thought, geez, this is easy. We're the Japanese. They got to be here. They've known for years we're coming. They prepared. They've been actually preparing for 4 years for this invasion, but there wasn't a shot fired. And when they got to this narrow strip of the island, they tried to take this hill, and they realized that there were honeycombs of caves in this hill that the Japanese general assigned in this particular field. He said, every square meter, one of you is responsible to not let anything enter that square meter. If there was a machine gun or rifle or a mortar that was to destroy anything in that square meter. So this was called a killing field. But the Americans had no idea that there were Japanese in these caves. So C Company was attacked the hill with 240 men. 16 came back. And this continued for 8 days. So 8 days, they had these kind of casualties. They would go up the hill and get shot in the back. They had no idea where the Japanese were, and they had to take this hill to advance on the island. This was sort of a turning point. So by the time Okinawa was secured, by June 22nd, the Americans had sustained over 49,000 casualties, including more than 1,250 men killed or missing. And Okinawans caught in the fighting suffered as much as 150,000 civilian casualties. So this was a horrific war. And this particular battle some said was the bloodiest battle of the Pacific. So they were defending this island with everything they had. And my dad entered his first combat battle at Sugarloaf Hill. And this was towards the end of the Americans trying to take this hill. So I'm giving you images to try to recreate what it might have been like for him. So he was sitting in a foxhole with his foxhole buddy, and he was watching the Americans just getting shot down as they tried to advance on the hill. He's 400 yards away. And he's watching with his binoculars. He said, I think I know what's happening. Every time the machine guns stopped firing from the hill that they couldn't see the soldiers, he said, I see a Japanese ammo barrier carrying a couple boxes, and he's carrying ammo to these machine guns. And he said, I've been watching him. He told his foxhole buddy he was watching him. So he said, I'm going to time him because he's doing this same pattern from rock to rock. And he started to apply everything he learned in rifle school. 400 yards away, he shot his rifle before this Japanese soldier even left the rock he was hiding behind, anticipating that this is his cadence. And he fired his shot, and from 400 yards away, dropped this ammo bearer. And this was, according to my dad, this was the last of the battle on this hill. Then he moved down to another part of the island, and there was a squad of, I think, 5 or 6 Marines. It was a machine gun squad, and my dad was in this squad, and they were on top of a hill. where Marines shouldn't be because anybody can see your silhouette. And over on the other hilltop were 12 Japanese soldiers, and they started waving at the Americans. And the sergeant said, well, wave back at them. So they waved back. And then the Americans set up their machine gun and started firing at these 12 Japanese. And when they got off 2 rounds and the machine gun jammed, it got a bunch of sand in it because it was a sandy, muddy island. It was really muddy at that time of the year. And so now they were outnumbered 2-1, and the Japanese threw everything at them. And so they were fighting for their lives, and they were outnumbered. So my dad found a banyan tree close by, and he said there was a lot of roots in it. So he stuck his rifle through these roots, and he watched these Japanese about 7,500 yards away. He started picking them off one by one. And his buddy next to him, I can't remember his first name, but his last name was McDermott. He said, great shot, Mac. You got one. There's 11 left. Okay, now you got another 10 left. He's counting down. And he gets down to the 10th one, and he takes him out. There's one left. And McDermott stands up. He says, all right, that's a great shot. We got him all. And my dad said, no, there's one more. Get down right now. And McDermott said, yeah. And right then took one right between the eyes and dropped him just that far away. And then the lieutenant came along and said, we got to move, guys. And my dad said, there's one more left, Lieutenant. And he got a shot from this sniper in the elbow out his wrist, and he survived, but I was obviously wounded. So that's just a little bit of background. Now, here's the cool part of this story. Now, this is kind of where is God involved in any of this? Okay, so this lower left picture here was this summer. We were in Virginia with the 50th anniversary of the Marines that fought on this island. They'd had reunions for 50 years, and this was going to be their last reunion. There was about 8 of them left. They're all in their mid to late 90s. And my dad's sitting there in the tux, and this guy standing next to him, he had come because he heard he came from another state, from New Jersey, I think, and he came because he heard this was the last reunion they were going to have. And his uncle died on Okinawa, and he thought, I'm just going to go see if any of these guys know anything about my uncle. So he's going around the tables and asking, do you know anything about my uncle? And he came into my dad, and my dad said, well, what was his name? And he said, McDermott. So he told him the story about how his uncle died, and he didn't know this. So this was like an answer to his prayers, and maybe a tender mercy of God to let him speak with someone who was the last one to talk to his uncle, who knew his uncle. That was a pretty special moment. Let me go back here to a picture of my dad on the right and my uncle on the left. My uncle is a year older than my dad. He drove the Amtraks on Iwo Jima, and because he was a Marine, my dad wanted to be a Marine. Mm-hmm. The cool thing about this is every time my grandmother wrote letters to her 2 boys, she would go out in the backyard and find a 4-leaf clover and stick it in a letter. This is my dad with his machine gun. Now, there was another time that my dad and his foxhole buddy, John Wells, were in their foxhole at night. You don't get out of your foxhole at night. If you're out of your foxhole, you're the enemy. So John Wells said, Mac, why don't you once you sleep, I'll be on first watch. So my dad's sleeping, and what's happening is they're hearing voices. They're hearing men moaning. They're hearing voices, and Wells is hearing 4 or 5 Americans coming in and saying they're carrying their wounded, and they said, well, give us the password. And they gave the correct password. Just then my dad was dreaming, and he heard his mother's voice say, Harry, wake up, they're coming with an iron hat. Japanese had silver helmets that when it was lit, it looked like an iron hat. And he woke up right at that time and said, John, what's going on? Oh, we got 5 wounded coming in. They just gave me the password. And right then a flare went up from one of the ships out at sea, and it just lit up the sky, and they could see the iron helmets 50 yards away, 25 yards away. So just in time to kill these 5 Japanese. Those are just a few of the combat experiences my dad had. So this picture was taken of his 2 buddies from boot camp, and Bob McTurius on the left and Don Mahoney in the middle. Don Mahoney, if you ever seen the movie Hacksaw Ridge, was shot close to where that battle was. And he said when he got shot in the chest. He felt like he got tackled really hard in football, that just the wind got knocked out of him. And he fell, and he could feel his shirt filling with something wet. He could hear his air leaving his lungs, and he was struggling to breathe. And the medic came to help him. The medic got shot and killed and fell right on top of him. And so Don was, and the medic were both taken to graves registration. They were going to be tagged and put in a bag and sent to be buried. And somebody saw Don's foot moving. And they said, well, he's still alive. So they saved Don. He lost a rib, a spleen. He had some other internal injuries, but he survived that conflict. Now, the other one, Bob McTurius, was from Altoona, Florida. And this is a picture of Bob McTurius on his last leave home. So he was saying goodbye to his parents for the last time before he went off to combat. This is a picture of my dad about that same time, home visiting his mom in Columbus before he left off to combat. So Bob McTurius was in a battle on the other, they split up when they got on the island, and Bob McTurius was on a part of the island, and he was watching 2 caves where Japanese machine guns were firing out on a field where American wounded were being lifted off by the medics. And the medics had the cross on their helmet. You know, the rules of war say you don't shoot at medics, but the Japanese didn't care. So they had these machine guns, and they were just mowing down these wounded and the medics with them. And Bob got mad at that, and he loaded his pockets and up with grenades and charged one of the machine gun nests and threw the grenades in and stopped the firing on one of the nests. But in the meantime, he got shot across the belly, and so he crawled back, was holding his guts in as he crawled back, got some more grenades. It was about 200-yard crawl. He crawled back and wiped out the other nest. So he stopped that, and he ended up dying 2 days later on an Army ship. And my dad had heard about this a few days later, and he didn't know what had happened until he got this letter. This letter was from Mrs. McTurius. And now with that background, you'll understand the letter. This is July 1st from Altoona. Dear Harry, just got the picture and letter from your mom, the picture of the 3 boys. And I'm oh so thankful for it. How happy we were to get it. But Harry boy, the next day, we got word our precious son was dead, said he died of his wounds received at Okinawa. If you can, would you please write us something about it? We are just hoping, if it had to be so, that you or his other buddy were close by. And will you please write, tell all us about him, won't you? God bless our boys, from Bob's mom. This has tear stains on it. My dad has this. And this is how he found out that Bob died. So this was in the local paper. It was a year later when the military came down and pinned the help me with it. What was the Congressional Medal of Honor on Bob's mom? Okay, now this is at his home in Altoona, Florida. Because of this heroic act, it's now a national monument. So this is the monument that was erected, and this was in 2003. They dedicated this monument and asked my dad to come down and speak. The guy in the middle is Bob's brother, and he's holding a picture of the 3 boys. And the guy on the left is Don Mahoney, the guy in the middle. So this was in 2003, kind of a special event. 2 summers ago, we were on vacation down in Florida, and we were close by. I said, Dad, we got to go to see this. So this is my dad saluting his monument, and then we went to his grave. The cool thing, to me, the neat thing was my dad, after the war, he went and spent 2 weeks with Bob's parents, like they asked him to. He said it was a hard thing to do. But now this house is a national monument. And this picture here was taken in Bob's bedroom that we walked in and had all these memorabilia. So my dad was back in that home 60, 70 years later. This was on the island of Okinawa, and this is my dad's handwriting. It says, "This is the rear of the cemetery. You can see almost how wide it was. It was more than 3 times as long. Boys here I knew were," and then he listed the guys that he knew who were buried there. And so he wanted to remember these guys. And so he wrote a poem about them. And that's why Logan was trying to help me with this. So let me see if you can hear this poem that he wrote.
Well, this is a poem called White Crosses that I made up to send to all the guys that I knew that were in the battle at Okinawa. And here's where it goes. We were also young in that battle long ago, on that island in the sea against the fearless foe. The sky was red with traces where the kamikazes flew. Bombs and shells dropped around us from somewhere in the blue. Our friends were killed and wounded right beside us day by day, but the cornmeal saved so many as we fought on our way. And when the battle ended, we stood to stretch our backs. We looked so tired and haggard as we emptied out our packs. We ate but little food was left on rations, K's, and C's. Then climbed a little nearby hill to look out at the seas. We gathered all the gear we had and headed back to port. But the Navy lost so many ships, our weight would not be short. When Division Cemetery came within our view, we stopped to see if buried there were many that we knew. We walked among white crosses all lined up in perfect rows, and read the names of many friends with tears our eyes did close. Here's Davy, and here's Howler, and there's Charlie B., McDermott, Hall, and Miller, the guy we just called Ski. Gundell and Boone and Camden, those names still ring a bell, but time will dim their faces in the places where they fell. We did not find my Betty Bob, his name was not there found, but a letter from his mom revealed his place in Howard ground. How could I forget Marines whose courage there did soar, who lost our lives in fighting for our country and our core? My flag has names and faces of those brave and noble men. It flies both night and day for wives that might have been. Now Don, John, and Ken and Ben, those back home again, have relived the life of ours that their gift was not in vain. And now our time is getting short and the ranks are getting thin. We pray our friends who guard the streets will surely let us in. This brotherhood is special, but for others hard to see, but not for those who lived in wars like you and me. And when our time on earth is up, and we join our friends above, we know our country will be safe for all the ones we love. For other sons will take our place in many battle scenes, in the Army, Navy, Air Force, Coast Guard, and the United States Marines. Thank you.
So I tell you that for a couple reasons. First of all, so you appreciate why we're here, why we have the freedoms we do. And it's so long ago, and so many people have forgotten the sacrifices that have been made. I reverence the flag. And when the Star Spangled Banner is played, I hear the gunfire, the calls of the wounded. I hear the weeping of the mothers crying over their sons who have died. And I have gratitude for anyone who's served to protect our country. And I think we all should appreciate that. And the second thing I wanted to say was, a month ago, I was this close to telling my dad, "Dad, you're dying. Are you ready?" And I couldn't quite say that. And all of my colleagues said, "Your dad is dying. You're just not seeing it." And the next day he started getting better. He was at hospice for 5 days and he got better. Last week he was pushing a cart at Sam's Club. He'll be 96 in July. He told me at hospice that he had 9 lives, but I said, you used 5 or 6 of them on Okinawa. So I don't think you have 9 left, but good for you. But you think about these guys that lived and the guys that died and how they were saved. I mean, whoops. Let me get to what that was. There was one time my dad was just standing by the road and he saw a bush with a flash in the bush. The shell was coming right towards his head. He ducked and just grazed the top of his ear. Another time he's sitting with on his bottom with his knees up, and there was a shot fired about 20 yards away, and then it was 10 yards away, and he realized there was a Japanese sniper someplace that had targeted him. So he got up, and another guy sat down, and he said, "Hey, you need to move." And just as he told him that, the guy took a knee to the bullet, or a bullet to the knee, and if my dad had been there, it would have hit him in the chest. I don't know why these things happen, but obviously his mission isn't done yet, and God's not done with him or the things that he needs to do and the lives he needs to touch. But I know all of us are here for a reason, and we all have times where we're there to touch and lift other people. And I think whether you're doing that by spreading the messages and the things you've learned here, or you just feel a need to call somebody or help somebody, don't put off those impressions. Act on those, because you never know who you're going to touch or lift or bless. And finally, I guess this is the image that I hope all of you will think about. This is my witness that he is there with us. And there are times when we don't feel that, but there are other times when I think we do feel the presence of a deity or power with us greater than our own. And if we act on those impressions to love and serve and help and forgive other people, I think we will feel his love for us, and we'll definitely feel the love for those that we serve. And that's one of the reasons I like doing this, because I feel how you heal. I see how you heal. And I, especially Kelly and I and Debbie, we love the stories you'll tell us in a couple of weeks about how you've changed your life, how things have started to improve. And it just is so meaningful for us. All right, so now we'll hit the highlights here. I usually do this like on Veterans Day or some other time when it's, when it fits. And you might say, why did you do that today? Well, it's because it's my wellness program, and you need to hear that. And that's why I did it. Okay. I came across this article. This is not the most recent article, but it goes back to what we talked about with the nitric oxide, Neo-40, the acute effects on oral nitric oxide supplementation on blood pressure. So these pictures, whoops, were right out of the study. Let me show you this first one here. So this picture here is the in your neck. This is 10 minutes after taking that Neo-40 lozenge. There's a small increase in diameter, and this is measuring the left common carotid artery diameter. And what this means here with that asterisk is that is statistically significant, that difference is not due to a random error. So the diameter is opened up, it's bigger. That means blood pressure should be lowering. Blood flow should be enhanced. Then we have this picture that actually shows that. This is the measurement. This is starting from 0 time when they take the lozenge down to an hour later. And you can see not a huge reduction in blood pressure, but 5 points consistently. So let me ask you a question now that you're all experts. If you're trying to lower your blood pressure and you take Neo-40 and it comes down a little bit, what else can you do without prescription medicine to lower your blood pressure? Exercise. One of the things exercise does is it helps you make more nitric oxide on your own. Okay. What else can you do? Eat healthy. And what is it we're trying to do to get rid of inflammation in our body?
Cut out the sugar and the fats.
Lower insulin, cut out sugar. And for some of us who tend to gain weight in the belly, we got to lose that belly weight, right? Because anytime you lose weight, you're going to help lower your blood pressure. saw a lady today, menopausal woman, in the last 2 years has gained 55 pounds, eating the same exercise, just actually doing CrossFit 3 or 4 days a week. Her problem is not her diet and it's not her exercise, it's her hormones. But now she has high blood pressure, 55 pounds of weight, gave her high blood pressure. I said, don't worry about that. That's going to come down when your weight comes off. Okay, so that was kind of a cool study. Okay, so this is what we talked about this last week. We kind of defined what it was. And the key here is the more you walk and get your heart rate up, the better you can burn oxygen and burn fat to lose weight and to stay healthy. Okay, and then if we choose to not be active, then obviously we're going to pay a price. So what are the benefits of doing the things we're talking about? Just walking or getting on a treadmill or a bicycle. What are some of the benefits? Well, I listed those in the presentation, but this was from the American Journal of Medicine a couple years ago. And these are quotes from the article. Reduced exercise capacity was a strong independent risk factor for all-cause mortality. So the harder it is for you to walk, the higher your risk of dying from all things. And we talked about how that includes cancer and heart disease in particular. And then in the article, they said more emphasis should be placed on measuring exercise capacity and developing strategies for its improvement in cardiovascular disease prevention. So to prevent heart disease, we got to do more walking. What do you do after you've had open heart surgery? Where do they send you? Cardiac rehab, right? They're saying, okay, you're not used to doing much. We're just going to start walking you slowly 3 days a week on a treadmill, make you go longer and then increase the speed. That is enhancing blood flow. And your body can grow new capillaries and new blood vessels if you demand it. So that's what happens. Okay, so how do we develop this fitness? Well, these are the guidelines that either moderate activity like brisk walking, 150 minutes a week is the goal, or you can go to a higher intensity and you don't have to go as much. So if you're more vigorous and your heart rate's up higher, then it's 75 minutes a week. But you can also mix and mingle those two, and you can spread it out over 2 or 3 sessions a day. It doesn't have to be continuous. And then this FIT principle is kind of a neat one to remember for everything we're going to talk about the next couple of weeks. How often, how intense, how long, and what type. This slide was reminding us that if you only walk 2 days a week, you're really not getting too much benefit. But 3 days is really where you start seeing the benefits we're looking for, with lower blood pressure, better weight control, lower cholesterol, better blood sugar, all those things. So don't make 3 times a week your goal, because if the weather's bad or something happens and you're only doing it 2 times that week, you're not getting the benefit that you really are looking for. The National Weight Control Registry did a neat study, and they put a bunch of people who are overweight, obese on a diet, and these were the things that they concluded that helped them to lose weight and keep it off. And the key here is they were walking briskly 65 minutes a day. Okay, so that's not something you just jump into, but that's a goal for some of us. If you're walking outside with a friend, that might not be too hard to do. If you're in the basement on a treadmill looking at a cement wall, that might not be easy to do. So that's when you get an iPad or a TV and you do something to distract you, because that's the only way I can do it. Most of us, though, if we're honest, we don't get the enough intensity or frequency of exercise to get the benefits that we're looking for. I came across this the other day. I thought I'd throw this in here. This is a Family Practice News article. Walking 7,000 steps a day may slash mortality risk by 70%. So it says even small incremental increases in steps per day are associated with a lower mortality risk during middle age. So starting at middle age, you start walking. A walking plan that gradually works towards 7,000 to 10,000 steps per day in middle-aged adults may have health benefits and lower the risk of premature mortality. You see the words there, may have health benefits. It's hard to prove this. This is an observational study. Okay, and then we talked about how you calculate your heart rate, right? And hopefully you're all able to do that on your own, where your maximum heart rate is based on your age. It's pretty simple math. So let's see. This is the formula. So for a 50-year-old, the maximum heart rate is 170. I'll tell you, when I hurt my arm, I didn't play basketball for 4 weeks, 5 weeks. And the research says when you stop vigorous exercise for a month, you've lost 50% of the aerobic capacity that you developed. So I knew I was going to be short of breath. The day I played, I wasn't short of breath. I was extremely short of breath. I actually felt miserable. I was worried. I was having some tingling in my neck. I wasn't running very far. I was really winded. So I got concerned. So last week, I had a stress test done. I said, hey, would you do the stress test for me? I said, how long do most people go on a stress test? Because it starts with a slow walk and then it's faster and then it's incline, incline, incline. They're trying to get your heart rate up. He said, well, not too many people make it past 12 minutes. I said, okay, I'll go 13 minutes. But I wasn't sure. So I got on the treadmill and I went 13 and a half minutes. And they said, you're the only person that's gone longer than you. Now, this is what I heard. I could be wrong. Was a guy in the Army who was running marathons, and he ran 16 minutes. Had I known that, I would have gone for at least 14. But I got my heart rate all the way up to the maximum heart rate. And what's important on those is not only what does your EKG look like when you're stressing the heart out as fast as it'll go, but how fast do you recover? How fast does it come back down when you stop exercising? I was breathing really heavy, but my heart rate came back down really nice. So I, again, was encouraged that it was okay. So I'm not sure what happened that day, but once I knew I was okay, I'm fine. In fact, I got this black eye Monday playing basketball. Got an elbow that knocked me down, but I kept playing. So, all right. So this is how you calculate the different zones: the aerobic zone, the fat burning zone, and the anaerobic zone. Now, somebody tell me what anaerobic means? Without oxygen. How do you feel when your heart rate is that fast with exercise? You feel like you can't get oxygen, right? You can't talk to people because you're just, all you can do is breathe. That's not really the goal for most of us, right? I mean, I had to get there on the stress test. But for most of us, if we're in the fat burning zone, that's good enough. So you can calculate these zones for each of you depending on your age. Okay, and that should help you when you're out walking or on a treadmill to kind of know which zone you're in. As you enter the aerobic zone, it's a little bit more difficult. You can talk, but you're not talking very much. You're short sentences and you're not carrying on long conversations. With a brisk walk, you can usually talk fairly easily. When you hit the anaerobic zone, all you're thinking about is, how do I get more air? Okay, I just Googled this because actually I talked about this today on WBTC. We talked about the fat burning zone and the anaerobic zone and how to increase metabolism. And this is what came up. And this is pretty cool because there's a calculator right there. And I wish that would have been my age, 50, that I would put in there. But it tells you, a 50-year-old, where their heart rate should be depending on what zone they're in. So maybe you're walking too fast. Maybe you don't need to go that fast. This was to remind you that if your goal is to burn fat, you actually burn fat really well when you can breathe, right? So this is brisk walking. So brisk walking will burn fat well because you need oxygen. It's just like a fire. There's no fire no oxygen in a fire. It doesn't burn. You got to get oxygen in there to burn the fat. So that's the good news about walking briskly. You can burn fat, but you don't increase your metabolism. When you get in the anaerobic zone, that increases your metabolism. And this is the image that I want to show you, and I'll come back to. But you see those two little images on the far left? That's the mitochondria in the cell. That's where your cell is burning fat. And when your metabolism is low and you're not exercising, you don't have much mitochondria. When you start slowly doing interval training where you get your heart rate up and you can't breathe and you come back down and you're pushing yourself more and more and you know you're going to be safe, then you develop more mitochondria. And that image on the right is someone who's increased their metabolism. Now they're burning fat really well, even at rest. Some of you have a hard time losing weight on 12,000 calories a day. Can you imagine eating 10,000 calories a day? The people that can eat 10,000 calories a day and not get fat have like 5 times as much mitochondria. They're just really good at burning fat because they've told their body, we're going to expend a lot of energy today. You better have enough storage, enough fat here so I can burn it. 10,000 calories. It's like an NBA basketball player, right? It's not what we're talking about. But the point is that is a lot. Yeah, and they're lean, right? But you sit next to them and they're hot. They don't have cold hands and feet. Their metabolism is just roaring like a bonfire. Okay, this was an article in the Family Practice News about diabetes, and they said that exercise cuts death risk by 1/3 in type 2 diabetes. So they're saying here type 2 diabetic patients could lower their risk for death from any cause by up to 1/3 by exercising at a moderate high level of by cycling. So that's not in the fat burning zone. That's a little higher, like the aerobic and maybe starting in the anaerobic zone. And the biggest reductions in all-cause mortality, so dying from any event, was in those who were cycling for 2.5 to 5 hours a week, and they were really kind of working pretty good at it. Okay, so that's what it takes. But you don't want to jump right into that if you're not sure you can do it. This is a gradual thing. Just like I told you about my father-in-law, who he said, I'm just going to start walking, and then it was I'll walk for an hour, but I'm going to jog from that telephone pole to that one, and then I'll walk. And then maybe I'll do that again. And within a year, he's running an hour a day at the age of 60, up until he was about 75. Okay, this just shows you different activities. So I put this up here just so you can think, well, I hate running. I'm not going to get on the treadmill, but I like swimming, or I like hiking. There's places to hike and up and down hills that get your heart rate up. So some of these things you don't think about as being activities that can get your heart rate up, but these are just some examples.
I got a question.
Yes.
What about chair volleyball? How's that fit in?
Yeah, I mean, there could be. And see, that's fun for a lot of people. And so it's got to be fun. And all you need to do is be able to measure your heart rate, either check your pulse or get a Fitbit or something to keep track of your heart rate. And that's the key. You got to make it fun. There's a lot of exercises. I tried what's the bicycling thing that you do? Spinning. I tried that 3 times and it killed me. And everybody that I was cycling against that day, I was dying, and they were all older and heavier, and they were crushing me. And I thought, there's something wrong with me. I went back again, and they were crushing me. And I said, this is not fun for me. I don't enjoy this. In fact, when I was on a scout camp out with some scouts, we had a bicycle trip from where we were camping to a town about 7 miles away, and it was along a river. And the path looked like we were going up a 3-degree grade. And I figured, well, that makes sense because there's rapids below us, so we're going up. About halfway into that bicycle trip, I thought, we're going to the other town to get ice cream. I'm like, I don't even want ice cream anymore. It's too much work. So I turned my bike around. I thought, this will be better. I'll just coast downhill and go back to where we started. And I'm not kidding you. When I looked at the end of that path going the other way, it was also 3-degree incline upwards. I mean, that's all I see when I'm on a bike. I see hard work. And so that's not my thing. All right. So this is kind of cool. This is what nature teaches us, right? The animals that are lean are sprinters. And when you sprint, you get your heart rate up. When you get your heart rate up, you get your metabolism up. When you get your metabolism up, you burn fat really well. There's only one creation on earth that's dumb enough to sprint, or not sprint, but jog for like 26 miles at a steady pace. And that's humans. So then this question was, who's the leaner athlete? Now, both athletes are going to burn a lot of fat, but the sprinters are always going to be leaner because the way they train, they're always in the anaerobic zone when they're running short distances. They can't catch their breath. So their metabolism goes up, their mitochondria goes up, and they burn fat extremely well. Okay, and then another way to do this, to get your heart rate up, is this interval training, which any gym you go into, you push interval training, it'll do something like this. You start out at kind of a lower pace, and this is perceived exertion. And then you go a little faster the next minute, then a little faster. By the time you get to a level 9 out of 10 intensity, that's almost as fast as you can go and not want to stop. You're thinking, I'm so glad that when I'm done with this last minute, I get to go back to that slow pace. And you kind of catch your breath when you go back to that slower pace, then you catch it and then you're pushing yourself again. But the good news is you only have to do this about 20 minutes because that will give you the benefits we're talking about. So again, that's only for those of you who feel like you're ready for something like that. And if you're not sure, get cleared by your medical provider. Okay, so we talked about how does exercise speed up metabolism? Because people talk about, I have high metabolism, low metabolism. And so I just wanted you to understand that this is what we're talking about. And this is old high school biology that most of us forgot. But the very end of this is called the electron transport chain. It's just passing an electron from one molecule to the next. And when it gets here, you take the final carbon from sugar or fat, and you make ATP, which is the fuel of your cell, and you make water and carbon dioxide. That's what you have to breathe off. And this molecule right here is CoQ10. So if you take a statin, cholesterol medicine, those deplete CoQ10. So you don't have enough statin. And when you deplete CoQ10, you're more tired, more achy, your muscles are sore. So if you're taking a statin, you have to take CoQ10 to replace that. And I don't know if it'll help you walk faster or better, but I certainly would take CoQ10. Okay. And then this is just showing you the difference between somebody who's a sedentary lifestyle and they're getting older. They don't have a lot of mitochondria in their cells. And then those that are really doing this higher interval training and they're doing a higher rate, they have increased metabolism because of all this mitochondria that can burn fat really well. So these are all the benefits that they see. Kind of beating this horse here. I know some of you don't like these images and this kind of stuff, but on this slide, people are going to see this and say, I got to get some of this stuff. You should get CoQ10, but this L-carnitine, that's probably not going to make a noticeable difference. There's a place for that biochemically, but what we got to do is just find things we love to do and just get out and do them and enjoy them. All right, let's see. So here's the kind of a review of fat burning zone versus high intensity training. I think I showed you that on the presentation earlier. Okay, a lot of different types of exercises. This is the key. You just have to find movements that you enjoy. This is a Fitbit. This is my Fitbit. That's how I track things. And this was this was what I did in a week's time, playing basketball on Saturday, Friday morning, and Monday morning. So you can see when I was in the anaerobic zone and couldn't catch my breath, and when I was kind of jogging behind the other guys, I run over the fast break. And you can see how many calories I burned. On Saturday, it was an hour and a half, almost 1,000 calories. And then this is one day when I got on the treadmill and I picked a pace and I stayed nice and steady. And you can see my heart rate was right here. It stayed really steady the whole time. The average heart rate is 153. That's, and my maximum is about 160. So I was pushing myself pretty good that day. And I burned 527 calories in 35 minutes. Let's see what else here. Okay, there we go. So when I was doing this, when I was high like that, I was making this thing happen. I was making more mitochondria. Okay, and then this one, I don't know what this one was. This was, I think this was a basketball. Yeah, this is basketball. Okay, so this is cardiovascular fitness summary between the fat burning zone and the high intensity. So that's kind of this is a summary of what I've been talking about. So these are the assignments I gave you. Oops, thought you might like that. That's a picture of my brother. Those are the kind of, I get those kind of birthday cards from him, so I give it back to him when I can. Okay, so next week, we're going to have Dr. Jakubowski come, and he's going to speak. I wasn't able to get a video made to show you some of the things that we do, but we'll make a lot of the things we're going to show you available on their Facebook page, Twin City Chiropractic, because we're going to talk about back pain, neck pain, shoulder pain, joint pain. I saw a lady today who's having pain in her knee. She's about 50 years old, a lot of pain in her knee. It was cracking and really bothering her. I said, I think you have a tight muscle on the outside of your knee, and it's pulling your kneecap off to the side, and it's not fitting in the groove. Dr. Jakubowski ought to be able to help you with that. So it'll be interesting to see if he does. But he's going to be wonderful. He's going to open your eyes up to a lot of the musculoskeletal things that plague us. Like I said, back pain, shoulder pain, neck pain, knee pain, elbow pain. Some really, really good treatments, and very simple and safe that he will offer you that most chiropractors don't learn to do. It's an elective that he chose in chiropractic school, and people love the benefits they get when they see him. And he's somebody you guys could see if you wanted to. So anybody have any questions? That's all I have for tonight. Yes.
Can I go back to when you were talking about supplements a couple weeks ago?
Yeah.
So I finally got some, but I'm not real, I take levothyroxine since I don't have a thyroid.
Okay.
Can I take them when I take that medicine, or should I take it later in the day?
You should always take thyroid by itself and wait at least 30 or 60 minutes before you put anything in your stomach. If you other things in your stomach will interfere with the absorption of thyroid replacement.
Okay. And should I take them when I'm eating?
Yes, that's when I take supplements. It should be in your food, right? So eat it there so you can absorb it really well.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Does steak really help a black eye?
Steak? I don't know. I don't know. I might have to try it. Actually, I was kind of disappointed with this because he hit me enough to cut the eye a little bit, not enough for stitches, not hard enough to get a good shiner. So I'm like, this is only going to look bad for a week. And I was like, what a waste. A nice shiner would have been 3 weeks of sympathy. This is going to be better next week.
As soon as I saw your black eye, he said it was basketball.
Yeah, he's probably had one of those too.
Did you call Fallon again? Or not?
He knocked me down. He
called
texted.
it on himself.
Yeah, I think he did. Yeah, he did.
Sure.
Yeah. I thought it was pretty fair because I'd done that too. So he was feeling bad about me last night and texted me and asked me how it was. I said, it's okay, but it's got a funny feature to it. It looks like there's a J and a C embedded on there. That's his initials. So. Any other questions? You guys just all excited to go out and walk tonight? Is that what it is? Yeah.
Earlier on, when you were talking about frequency, so if you exercise 6 days a week, that's obviously the maximum benefit.
Uh-huh.
Why does it go down so far on the 7th day if you exercise 7 days?
Because your body needs a break. It needs time to recover. And, I play basketball 2 or 3 times a week, and that's enough for me. 4 hours, my knees are starting to hurt. And even the elite athletes, they'll have an off season, or elite athletes, a pitcher will only throw so many times, or somebody in the NBA, they're only going to let them play so many minutes because they need time to recover. And I think we all need that. We definitely, 5 days a week might be enough. If your body is aching and hurting, and your joints are hurting, it may be telling you need to slow down a little bit. And certainly if you start having some kind of a tendonitis issue when you're out doing your walking or you're exercising, your body's saying, okay, there's a mechanical imbalance here and you're aggravating this. And if you keep doing this, I'm going to keep trying to get your attention by making you hurt. That's where Dr. Jakubowski will come in next week to help us with that. But we all need to rest and recover. And I keep telling myself I should really take 2 or 3 weeks off of basketball every 3 or 4 months just to time to recuperate. But it's hard to do when you like something. So anything else? Yes. Uh-huh.
especially on the treadmill. Would you say that's something that I maybe need to stretch more, or what causes that?
There's a lot of things that could cause that. If you have a flat foot, when your foot hits the ground like this, it will roll inward. So if this is your left foot, when your foot hits the ground, if it kind of rolls in like that, it puts a big stress along the shin. So the first thing is to make sure you don't have flat feet or get arch supports. The next thing is to make sure your Achilles is really stretched, your calf is really stretched, and check your mechanics. Hopefully you guys, those of you who like to run, watch that video that I showed you of the Athens Olympics, where they were showing you the correct running form, and you could see where their foot was hitting and how strong they were in the hamstrings and buttocks and how flexible they were in their hip flexors. That's also part of it. One thing that might be cool for you is my daughter one time was in the gym, and I said, let me tape you running on the treadmill. And I did it in slow motion. And it was real. I did it from the back and the side, and we could see things that she was doing mechanically that were going to throw her off. That would be a good thing for you maybe to see if somebody would do that, and then bring it in maybe next week and let Dr. Jacobowski or I look at it and see if we can identify, something that might not be right with your mechanics. Yeah, that would be a great idea, because that can be really helpful. Yes.
So exercise will help with my awful high blood pressure.
Absolutely.
Because
Yeah.
my doctor the other day, he just didn't know what he's going to do with me. I mean, it was 203 over 98. It was awful.
Yeah. Yes, it does help with blood pressure for sure. Mm-hmm. Anything else? Oh, wow. Oh, yes,
I'm
Diane.
gonna get kicked out now. This is not a question, it's a comment, but not to embarrass you or anything, but crossed my mind that maybe you're so valuable to this community and beyond that maybe you are the reason your dad didn't die.
That what? I'm the reason that what?
Your dad did not die.
Oh. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. I've mourned his death twice. 2 times in the last year, I thought he died, and I was going through the grieving process, and then he bounced back. So, but I'm happy that he's got a good quality. His mind is good most of the time, and he's up and about.
And if I did math right, though, when he was in the war, you weren't around yet.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. Yeah,
Good reason.
yeah. Yes, ma'am.
And I thought that the soldiers with Okinawa had a reflection on the Ukraine situation.
Yeah,
That was fitting to
yeah. You think about that. Yeah, there's a lot of suffering.
Yeah.
And that's hard to come to grips with when you believe in God and you see things happen. Like, why would he let that happen? But there's always a different perspective, and then you look at the big picture. Sometimes later it sort of makes sense. So hopefully that was meaningful to all of you, because I've had meaningful moments. I don't know if I told you about one of my patients that he'd been my patient for a long time, and he had he's a real nice guy. He had a stroke when he was 35, couldn't use his whole right side of his body, and he was stuck in a wheelchair. And then he ended up having an amputation in his leg. Circulation was bad. Then he had open heart surgery, and he was rehabbing in the nursing home, and he coughed one night 3 weeks later, and he just ripped the wires in his chest, and his chest just opened up. The sternum just ripped right open, had to have it closed again. And so he's 55, but he was always happy, just really happy. And he was working part-time and driving, a car. And then he got an infection that it was resistant to every antibiotic. He was at Cleveland Clinic, and they said, you're not going to survive. So they sent him to a hospice house. And I knew he was there. I thought, I was driving to church one night. I thought, Scott's just down the road. I probably ought to stop and see him. So I went, and that's never comfortable, right? Funerals aren't comfortable, hospice houses and hospitals when people are dying. But I thought it was the right thing to do. So I went over and I walked in this room. I didn't recognize anybody. There's about 10 people there. Once the sister stepped forward and said, is this Scott's room? She said, yeah, I'm his sister. I said, does he know what's going on? Is he awake? Yeah. So I walked over beside him, and I got about this close to him. And I said, Scott, do you know who I am? And he nodded. And I said, I just want you to know you're one of my favorite patients, and I'm praying for you. And a tear fell down his cheek onto his pillow. And that was about all I said, and I walked out. And when I was getting in my car, this doesn't happen very often, but this is one of those things that convinces me there's a higher power. I distinctly had words form in my mind that said, he's my son too, and I love him. You have done as I would have done. You have visited the sick. And then I broke down. I think those things are real. And when we're in his service, serving others, I think that's when we really feel the power of that love. And that was a really meaningful experience to me. I don't even know why I said that to you, but anyhow. All right. Well, thanks for coming tonight. We'll see you next week.